Travillian Next is hosted by the Travillian Group. Please visit www.travilliangroup.com to learn more about our specialty in the placement of board members, C-level executives, and other professionals within community banks and credit unions.
Hey, I'd like to welcome Nathaniel Harley, the CEO and co-founder of MANTL in New York City. Thank you for joining us today, Nathaniel. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Super excited to be chatting.
Yeah, of course. And I think we were initially introduced via Patrick Sells, who was on our first episode for Travillian Next. So I'm really happy to have you on our second episode. I know we spoke a few months ago, right in the middle of the pandemic.
Yeah.
You were in New York City at the time, and just I can tell you were tired because your business has been booming, exploding.
Yeah.
So just to give people kind of a brief overview, what is MANTL? And what do you do? Who do you partner with? And love to learn more.
Definitely. So high level, MANTL is an enterprise software company that helps banks and credit unions grow deposits and operate more efficiently. We've built a modern account opening solution that connects real time and into the bank's core banking system. And we've already helped community banks raise over $1 billion on the platform, which is, a really big feat that we're super proud of. Essentially, what we're doing is we're reimagining the experience from the ground up in many ways, right? And our account opening experience is among the fastest in the industry and highest performing in the market. Some of our clients have seen their customers open accounts in 1 minute. On average, I think it's about 2 minutes and 37 seconds, all while reducing fraud by over 60%. So they're seeing really strong outcomes from the solution. And it's really been a powerful tool to help them grow and really operate more efficiently.
That's amazing, man. And I remember when we last spoke, I think your volume went up by, what was it, 800%?
Yeah, 700.
When did how did you guys handle that increase in volume? Because everybody has their strategy, kind of okay, this is how we're going to grow. To go from 0 to 800% within the span of a couple of weeks, it's exciting, but at the same time, a lot of challenges there, right?
So luckily, the way that the technology is architected, it is actually very scalable. So there wasn't a ton that we needed to do to support these banks in their growth. They had actually all of the tools really at their disposal. And that's one of the benefits, I think, of the MANTL platform, is that it's a cloud-based software. There's a lot of sort of self-serve configuration built into the platform that really puts a lot of power in the bank's hands. And so when they need to raise, let's say, millions of dollars of deposits in a certain number of days, they have the tool to do that without really needing to do anything extra. And what allows them to do that really successfully is the automation that we built into the platform, right? And that really gives them a ton of leverage, ton of operational leverage to be more efficient so that they can handle an influx of thousands and thousands and thousands of applications. Great example, Cross River Bank, who was raising, I think they raised about $250 million of deposits in 15 days to help fund some of the PPP loans that they were doing. They were able to do that very successfully. And they were able to do that because they had a tool that didn't require a lot of manual intervention. And, they're obviously a very tech-forward bank. So, that's how we sort of think about it and why these banks are really able to achieve the outcomes they're looking to do when they set out.
No, that's great. Thanks, Nathaniel. Now, what separates MANTL's product or products? I know you're moving into new areas, very interesting areas, and you're not just account opening on the retail side. What separates your products from the competition? Say a core provider or a more established company?
Yeah. So MANTL is building, in many ways, the Shopify for banks, right? And what that really means is Shopify obviously took a retail industry that was primarily brick and mortar and allowed them to stand up an online e-commerce platform, right? And what we are doing is we're building that digital storefront or branch on behalf of our banks and credit unions. We are reimagining the experience outside of the branch. We're bringing that experience inside of the branch, but it's much more than that. We're really reimagining the entire back office and how the bank operates in many ways. And I talked a little bit about this, but the automation that we built into the platform has taken away a lot of the manual work. It allows our banks to scale very efficiently. We've digitized the process to essentially get rid of all these paper documents, right? If you would walk into a branch, you would have to fill out number of forms. You would have to physically sign. You'd have to hand over your driver's license, all these different things. We've completely digitized that process, which, as you can imagine, is an amazing customer experience for the bank's customers, but is also an amazing experience for the bank employees, right, at the end of the day. And what this boils down to is this just allows the bank to operate like a neobank or a fintech and be extremely nimble and efficient. From a technology perspective, everything's cloud-based, right? So that allows us to do a number of things. One, push updates to the product very frequently. We push updates to the product, once a week, if not once every 2 weeks. So banks are constantly getting improvements to the platform. That allows us, and since it's based in the cloud, to give these community banks a Chase or fintech-like experience at the end of the day, right? Because we're able to sort of leverage and scale that software. And we've built what we call our core wrapper API, which essentially enhances the bank's core banking system. And it allows us to launch these digital products quickly on top of this legacy infrastructure without needing to go through the heart transplant of a core migration that can take you many years and cost you millions of dollars.
Painful.
Exactly. Super, super painful. It also allows MANTL to be a single point of integration for these best-in-class solutions. So what we're doing is we're pulling in the best KYC and AML vendors, the best funding vendors, the best email marketing automation, et cetera, et cetera. And now we become that single point of integration for these banks. And at the end of the day, all of these things boil down to just improved outcomes from the bank, right? And we've taken a 20-minute account opening experience down to 2 minutes. We've taken conversion rates that, on some of our competitor sites would be about 8% to 80%, right? Wow. Mind-blowing increases. We've helped them raise hundreds of millions of dollars of deposits through the platform in days, and they're opening thousands of accounts a month. So the outcomes that we generate are, at least in our opinion, and when you look at the numbers, just significantly better than what you're seeing from some of the other vendors in the space.
That's amazing. And conversion rates, over the last 6 months, just speaking with executives and speaking with consultants. I mean, our daily lives, we're so used to efficiencies, customer journeys, the ease of use. Why would we consider anything else or anything less for our financial institution when it comes to that whole journey, becoming a brand? And it seems like you're helping your customers, and we have similar customers with executive search and senior level search. So your target are those smaller to mid-range banks? What's kind of your core target audience or your core target client list?
Definitely. So I think it spans a few different areas with banks that we like to work with. I think you have banks on the platform that are honestly just launching account opening for the first time, right? They have a really strong brand or branch network within a community. Maybe they have 5, maybe they have 10, maybe they have 15 branches within the St. Louis area or whatever it may be. And they understand that they need to launch an online platform for a few different reasons. Maybe 1, they want to give their customers a better experience. 2, they want to raise deposits. 3, they want to increase their core checking account relationships. Maybe they want to go younger. And also they want to increase their national footprint, right? So perfect example of that, Midwest Bank Center. Midwest Bank Center is, I think, over 100-year-old bank, community bank based in St. Louis. The approach they took was super interesting in that they created a digital-only brand, so called Rising Bank, that was separate from the Midwest Bank Center traditional brand. And they used that as a sandbox to essentially test new technologies, but also build that competency in-house without creating risk to the core business. And it was massively successful. They raised $75 million of deposits in the first 10 weeks. They've done over $180 million to date. They increased their national footprint to all of the states across the country. They were very successful in capturing a younger demographic. And I think about 6% of their customers are now between the ages of 18 and 25. And now what they're doing, and this is super cool, they're applying the lessons they learned from this digital-only brand and bringing it into the traditional brand. And now they've launched the online account opening piece for their brick and mortar brand.
So you could be a 150, 200-year-old bank or a brand new neobank.
Yep.
And I think actually the older established banks, like the one you just mentioned, are the banks that could benefit the most. Definitely. So yeah. So how long, Nathaniel, does it take from kind of scoping to go live for MANTL? I was reading something about the Cross River project, and contract was signed in November, and you went live in April of the next year. Is it less than 6 months?
Definitely less than 6 months. I think on average we do it in about 4 months right today, but we can get a bank live in as little as 90 days. And that's super powerful. And the reason why we can do that is a number of things. One, we are a truly SaaS business. So what that means is once we've integrated with a core banking system before, so let's just use an example. Let's say we've integrated with FIS Horizon, right? Once we've integrated with FIS Horizon for one bank, now a second bank comes onto the platform. We don't need to write any new custom code for that bank. So we're able to stand that bank up really, really quickly and efficiently. So doing things like that allow us to really, I think, create an industry-leading implementation process and get these banks live really quickly in
90 days.
90 days, yeah.
Unbelievable. So when you're working, and you work with some of the most innovative banks out there, just to name a few, Quantic, Radius, you mentioned Cross River. We know these banks well and respect them tremendously. What is a similar trait that they have for this innovation? Is it at the leadership level? What do you see when you go in there and it's just, wow, these banks are doing it differently?
It is the culture at the bank. It comes down to the culture at the bank, and ultimately this is set from the top. But what we see is that these banks have a culture of innovation. They believe and feel it's very important to facilitate a digital transformation. And the banks you actually mentioned, I think they've had an easier time embracing this disruptive technology because they've had less legacy processes. Like they're not, they haven't been around for 150 years that they need to sort of overcome. And they've taken a really smart approach to building teams that are comfortable with risk. And that's super important because there's tension, right? There is tension between compliance and then marketing and acquisition. And you need to strike a fine balance between that. You have to be compliant, but you also have to grow your bank. And so what compliance's role at the bank should be is problem solving. How do we solve the business needs? And how do we ensure that we're not putting up roadblocks where, where that's not necessary? So the banks that you mentioned, Radius, Cross River, Quantic, who we think of as some of the most forward-thinking banks, they have a huge competitive advantage, and they focus on what is possible when it comes to growth, rather than what has been done before. And they think of technology as an investment, not as a cost, right? And that's super important because ultimately banks that view technology as a cost center are trying to minimize costs and go with solutions that ultimately, quite frankly, are not right for them and will not help them grow. But if they choose solutions like a MANTL that is actually able to help them grow 4 times faster and at a 50% more efficient clip, that's where they're going to start to see the real outcomes. And that's when they're going to start to be very successful.
And I've heard that often from the innovators. I like to say the innovators, the disruptors, fintech and banking, looking at technology not as a cost. Technology is a way to expand your customer base, reach your customers. You cannot look at it as an expense. Yes, there's some cost of doing business, of course, but from the standpoint of what technology can do to enhance the customer experience and the customer journey, it's that mindset. And it's really hard to think of technology like, oh, we got to spend another $2 million on servers and this. But and with your technology and other fintechs out there, the expense is not that high. Or like
it's not. Yeah. And in many ways, it's less expensive than building a physical branch.
Yeah,
right?
Of course.
And it's just it's a change. It's a change in mindset. One other example that I just wanted to sort of highlight, because I think it relates to your question on, what are the types of banks that MANTL works with? And I kind of gave the example of a Midwest bank center who, historically did not have online account opening and then used a digital branch strategy or a digital brand strategy to launch that and get their feet wet. We also see it with banks that have done online account opening before too, right? And Flushing Bank, which is a bank in New York, love them because they are a great example of not being complacent. They were early adopters in services like online account opening and online mobile banking, but they recognized that their technology had fallen behind and was not considered best in class from a customer experience standpoint, or even from an internal operations standpoint. So they underwent a complete refresh of their 3 brands and saw results immediately. 19% of account openings in Q2, right? Obviously, sort of through COVID, were digital despite no dedicated marketing. They saw deposits on checking accounts ranging from $9,000 to $17,000. 90% of the applications that came through the system needed zero human intervention, right?
Wow.
So it's not only the banks that are the sort of Cross River, Radius, Quantix of the world, or the banks that are Midwest Bank Center trying to break into it. There are also banks that have tried this before, but are tired and are not complacent, that we are seeing having a lot of success when they switch to a solution like a MANTL.
That's fantastic. And kind of going back to what you were saying before, what do you think is the future of kind of the branch digital model? To me, it's very similar to how retail was, 15, 20 years ago.
Wow.
And the companies that are really thriving now are those kind of click and mortar, giving your customers options. I don't think branches are completely going away, but I don't see many companies or many banks opening a lot of new branches. What are your thoughts there about that kind of hybrid model?
So fully agree with you. I think there's a lot of parallels to be taken from the retail industry. And you see it with companies like Casper, right, who started out as a direct-to-consumer brand, but then launched a store, or Amazon, who now sort of spins up physical locations. The physical branch is important, and it should be considered a channel and a marketing channel, just like any other channel that the bank has. But what the physical branch really does is it complements the digital experience. Physical branches, at least in our opinion, should be used to build brand awareness, right? Having them on the street, obviously.
Marketing.
Awareness, marketing, exactly. It should be a place for people to go if they need to talk to someone, or be used as an educational hub, right? For example, let's say you're onboarding a business, they need to learn QuickBooks or some accounting software. Why not create these more experiential situations within the branch that really add value? Now, what I do think, I think the online channel is really geared towards converting that customer, right? And making sure that, all right, they may have walked into the branch, they like what they've seen, they don't want to wait 30 minutes to open an account, but now I can convert them online, and that's super important. But it also allows them to expand their footprint. And one of the coolest pieces of data that we've gotten as we've started to work with more and more banks that have a pretty significant branch network is that there's actually latent demand built up by these branches. So perfect example, bank has 10 different branches, right, across their community or whatever, wherever it is, they do not have online account opening. They turn on online account opening, do zero marketing, and there's anywhere from about a 5 to 10 account per branch need that just starts flowing in, because you have customers that don't want to drive into the branch and want to open an account online, and are frustrated by that. You also have people that see the branch on the side of the street but may live a little bit further away, that they like the brand and they like the branch, but they don't want to go into it all the time. So I think there's a little bit of a fallacy where you need to have true, really strong digital marketing capabilities. I think on one hand, it's important, and you do, right? And that's how you grow your business. But you can also drive a significant amount of accounts online through just by having that branch network established previously.
Yeah, it's amazing. It'll be really interesting to see over the next year or so what banks do, what their strategy is when it comes to branches and how many they need versus the digital channel. Since we do play in that same playground at community banks, and our audience is really geared towards executives at community banks, what are some trends you're seeing out there right now that community banks should be forming strategies around?
Yeah, so I think number one, the CARES Act created a path for community banks to win back SMB assets, right?
Yes.
The same wasn't so true on the deposit side. So I think there is a massive, massive opportunity right now to focus on those commercial customers and commercial onboarding to capitalize on that goodwill that a lot of the community banks have built through the PPP program and the CARES Act, but they need a way to service those business customers, right?
Yep.
And that comes through technology. So commercial business account opening, I think that is a major focus right now. We're hearing that from a lot of the banks that we talk to. And, super excited for some of the things that I think will be coming out over the, next quarter, 2, 3, that are really going to help banks capitalize on that. I think the other thing that we think about a lot, obviously we're in a very low interest rate environment, right? And the need for deposits has kind of come down a little bit, right?
Yep.
That being said, now's actually a perfect time to get more deposits because they're super cheap. Why wait a year, 2 years, 3 years for interest rates to skyrocket? And now I have to pay, 2%, 3% interest rate for the savings or CD account. Why not get a little bit ahead of the curve today, get some of those deposits on the platform so that, in the future when costs rise, you're not in a position where you need to pay obviously much higher costs. I think related to that though, and because deposits is a little bit less of a focus, is establishing these core checking account relationships, right?
Yep.
How do you bring in the customer that has that checking account, switching their direct deposit is going to stay with you for a very long time? That's what banks need to be focused on, because I think there's a huge opportunity to start taking advantage of that right now.
Now, are you talking about more cross-selling, upselling, bringing more products? I always think the future is becoming a partner, a true partner across the board for your customer, and not just a checking account. I like Ron Shevlin always says a lot of these banks have checking accounts and they're kind of like deposit motels.
Yeah.
You have your direct deposit come in from your employer and then the money goes everywhere else.
Yeah.
To other platforms, whether it's investments or donations or whatever. When that bank can become kind of the place where you stay and keep that money and wealth management, there's so much possibility there.
So much. And I think you're going to see over time, as the sort of online banking platforms expand, they're going to start bringing in a lot of these services and making them available to the community banks so that they can provide them to their end customers and hopefully decrease the chances that it becomes their secondary institution or money's leaving the system. There's a lot of cool stuff going out there that I think is going to really just help retain customers and make sure they don't leave.
Yeah. So I know we've mentioned some fantastic companies, Cross River, Radius. What are some of the other fintechs to keep an eye on, or other community banks you've worked with that you just admire? Any that come to mind?
Yeah, I mean, admire all the ones we mentioned, NBC, Flushing, Quantic, Radius, Cross River. I think, a few of the other customers we work with, Emprise Bank is really awesome. Happy State is really awesome. So we're fortunate in that we work with a lot of the more forward-thinking, fastest growing community banks in the US. I think on the fintech side, we're seeing a lot of opportunity. Number one is in obviously the KYC, AML, but also transaction monitoring space.
Yep.
A company called Alloy, who I'm sure you're very familiar with, that's doing incredible things, and we work very closely with. They've really brought enhanced decisioning into KYC and transaction monitoring, and the results that we get with them are honestly just incredible. Yeah. There's a company called Middesk, which is doing a lot of work for business account opening to really help with non-document based verification as the primary step, and then document based verification later on. But they're tapping into data sources that we haven't had access to over the past 5 to 10 years. So I think what you're going to see from a business account opening standpoint is more and more and more automation over time as we get more access to these data sources. And I think Middesk is certainly one of them. So those are two companies
those are great
on the compliance side and KYC side that we love and work closely with. There are obviously companies like Plaid and Autobooks who we like a lot that are doing some really cool things. You can go to our website. It's just www.mantl.com and check out our website and some of the things that we offer. You can either request a demo through the site, or you can honestly just reach out to me directly. My email is nathaniel@mantl.com. Super simple, hopefully easy to remember. But we'd love to help and be a sounding board and really just be a partner as a lot of these banks think about digital evolution, digital transformation, and what the future looks like.
Yeah. And one last question: where did the name come from? Is it Mickey Mantle?
Great question. No, it's not. I am a baseball fan, but it's not Mickey Mantle. So the mantle is the part of the earth that wraps around the core.
Right? Now it makes sense.
So
now it makes sense. That's why the core. I get it. That's great. That's great. I thought it was Mickey Mantle. I could have sworn it was something to do with.
It's a good guess. The spelling's a little bit off. We also dropped the E at the end just to be cool.
That's great, Nathaniel. Thank you so much for being on Travillian Next. Couldn't ask for a better kind of 1-2 punch between you and Patrick Sells.
Appreciate that.
Can't wait to see what's next for MANTL and the whole industry. But thank you so much, man.
Thanks for having me on. Great chatting. Talk to you later.